Now should be a time for America to step up and lead, but the bill we are discussing today would take us in the wrong direction. In the Arctic, temperatures are rising 4 times faster than the global average. Indigenous communities in northern Alaska disproportionately feel the devastating impacts of the climate crisis. Melting permafrost, erosion, and rising sea levels are eating away at the ground underneath us, creating some of our country's first climate refugees. H.R. 6285 would also automatically reinstate Trump-era leases in the Arctic refuge and force a second lease sale in the region. There would be no public input, no judicial review, and no requirements to comply with the Endangered Species Act, among other waivers. Some say this is necessary for domestic energy production and energy security, but I remind my colleagues that the lease sales were quite a disappointment compared to the original estimates of revenue and industry interest when they were first proposing them. 2 landmark reports this month, the 5th National Climate Assessment and the UN's Emissions Gap Report, delivered what should be a wake-up call to all of us. The climate crisis is not only here, but will grow more catastrophic without rapid and deep cuts to greenhouse gas pollution. But as world leaders prepare to meet for COP28, none of the G20 countries are reducing emissions at a pace consistent with climate targets that we need to avoid catastrophe. Thawing sea ice makes hunting and fishing hazardous and unpredictable. Species shifting migration patterns challenge food security and cultural continuity. Oil and gas development exacerbates all of these threats. In Nuiqsut, the Alaskan native village nearest to the Willow Project, 70% of households rely on subsistence resources for more than half of their diet. Hunters are being forced to travel further and further to find resources and to avoid hunting grounds now dominated by industry. In the Arctic refuge in northeast Alaska, fossil fuel development is a looming threat to the Gwich'in people. Their way of life depends on the survival of the caribou herd that reproduces in the region. Of course, not all Alaskans, including indigenous Alaskans, share the same perspectives on oil and gas development. Revenue from extraction can support local governments and indigenous corporations, but for many, the trade-offs create unacceptable impacts. And for many, the purported benefits of these projects have been overblown. Earlier this year, the Biden administration approved the Willow Project despite strong opposition from the Nuiqsut and climate advocates across the country. Proponents of the project say it will be an economic boon to northern Alaska and will help us achieve, quote, energy dominance, unquote. But of the 2,500 construction and 300 permanent jobs ConocoPhillips says the Willow Project would create, few are expected to actually go to people from the community. The project could create 600 million barrels of oil, but it won't significantly change U.S. imports and is unlikely to impact oil prices anytime soon. It will also release nearly 9.2 million metric tons of carbon pollution into the atmosphere each year, the equivalent of putting 2 million gas-powered cars on the road. While I strongly oppose the administration's decision to approve Willow, I am optimistic about the latest decisions to cancel the remaining Arctic refuge oil and gas leases to promote conservation in the National Petroleum Reserve, Alaska, or NPRA. Unfortunately, the legislation on the agenda today would undermine that progress. This legislation would withdraw the proposed rule promoting conservation in the NPRA, which would create important protections for species, habitats, and ecosystems that are essential for indigenous communities' ways of life. Rolling back these protections puts far too much at risk. Drilling was banned in the Arctic refuge until 2017, when Republicans in Congress and then President Trump authorized extraction in the region to offset tax cuts for the wealthy. The Trump administration said that lease sales in the Arctic refuge would bring in $1.8 billion over 10 years. But in the end, the lease sale was a paltry $15 million, less than 1% of initial projections. So instead of considering a bill that puts the interests of oil companies over those of the planet and the people, I wish we could be here discussing how we can lead, how we can move to save our planet while prioritizing the lives of indigenous communities, workers, and ordinary Alaskans who don't need to depend on fossil fuel profits. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses, and I yield back.